Hey friends, welcome to Season 3, Episode 18 of the Sassy AF audio experience and Sassy AF TV. Empower yourself to grow. Do you know what your core values are? Core values are at the heart of my 5 pillars of wisdom, essential to self-care and critical to your personal growth. This week's guest on the podcast is Dr. Summer Watson, the founder of Core Women. Summer is passionate about teaching women to find strength, courage, inspiration, and empowerment in their daily lives. In this interview, we talk deeply about how you know your core values and how knowing your values allows you to empower yourself. We also talk about the importance of not being perfect and how we grow from life's missteps. As Summer says, it's okay to have missteps. That's what makes us unique and glorious. Summer has a great story to tell of her own growth and how she has relied on her core values and beliefs to lead her to success and joy in her life. This week's podcast is sponsored by I Am Limitless, a women's circle for sassy women. If you are looking to deepen your connection to yourself, really get focused on your intentions, manifest exactly what you desire, and connect with women in a fun, sassy way, this 7-week women's circle is for you. For more information, head to sassyhealthy.fit/women's circle. Signups close October 1st, so don't wait. Space is limited. Remember, you are limitless. sassyhealthy.fit/women's circle. Well, welcome back to another episode of Sassy AF TV and the Sassy AF audio experience. I'm Hallie Avolio, and my special guest today is Summer Watson. You are going to love her. She is amazing. She is a doctor of psychology. She has a fabulous business called Women. And the thing that drew me to Summer most is her book, Fuck Yeah, Real with Strong Language. You're my kind of girl, Summer. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here with you. Thank you for the invite. I can't wait to get into this.
Me too. Well, tell my audience, who are you? Who is Dr. Summer Watson? What are you about? What do you stand for? Give us the whole background in like 90 seconds.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So my name is Dr. Summer Watson. I am a doctor of psychology. I also have a master's in human services. So during my evolution, professional and personal, I grew up in California. I currently live in Washington, D.C. I was 20 plus years a military wife. So I moved all over the country as well as lived outside of the country for 3 years in Okinawa, Japan. And so I am a coach, doctor of psychology. I am an author, a podcaster. I do a couple of live shows on Instagram, and I also have hosted seminars. So there's me in that 30 to 90 second nutshell.
You nailed that. You nailed that, by the way. I just want to share with the audience that before I hit record just now, I asked Summer, there is so much to talk about. What should we focus on today? Because I could do 4 interviews just talking about your background and your history and the breadth of knowledge and wisdom and inspiration that you bring to the table. So I'm really honored that you're here. And I know one of the things that holds true to you, aside from just your sassy side, your fun side, the fact that you say fuck like I do, and you're not afraid of a strong word like that.
No.
But I love that you incorporate that with this idea of our beliefs and values and how crucial that is to our mindset and taking care of ourselves. Could we talk a little about that?
Absolutely. So to be empowered is to understand yourself. To be empowered is to understand your values and beliefs. To be empowered also means valuing yourself and knowing your value and your values. So that's something that I talk about in this co-authored book, F Yeah, Get Real with Strong Language. So there it is, everybody. And I throw out a little bit of the F-bomb. So
we'll drop a link in the show notes too. So if anyone wants to grab a copy, I'll put it there for them.
Yes, absolutely. And you can find it on Amazon or basically anywhere. So Barnes and Noble. So basically what we talk about in the book is understanding your values and beliefs. And I marked a couple of pages because I think they're really critical here in this book. So one of the pages is towards the end of the book, page 57. And we actually ask you to construct your own personal core values plan. And that's really important because, again, it's about knowing your values and beliefs. If you don't understand who you are, what your core values are, how do you expect others to understand who you are? How do you expect yourself to feel empowered and know who the heck you are if you don't have an understanding of your own values? And your own values can mean that you're a peaceful person, that you are a fun person, that you like to provide service to others, that you stand for justice, that you want fame. I mean, understand what they are. It doesn't matter what they are as long as you have a good understanding, a clear understanding of what those are, because that makes you a stronger, well-balanced, understood person.
Absolutely. Well, and I would love to piggyback on that. And one of my big teachings, I have something that I call the 5 pillars of wisdom. And within that is the idea of radical self-care and radical self-love. And it is my belief that if you don't know what your core values truly are, you can't experience radical self-care or radical self-love because you won't be in alignment with who you truly are. Yeah. And so one of the teachings that I often start with my clients is self-awareness, asking yourself the hard questions. What are my core values? Who am I at my core? Because when you can really understand that, then it allows you to open up to so many more possibilities. And I'd love to get your take on, because I know we briefly touched on this before we recorded, was about how your background can actually help identify what your core values are. And if you want to share a little bit about your backstory, that might be an interesting segue into this conversation.
Okay, I will. I'll share a bit about my backstory, and then let's get into that conversation because it's a great question. So early on, I think, and I'll start way back when, my mom was a very young mom. She had me at 19. I was somewhat of a sickly baby, so I had a hole in my small intestine at 6 months, which wasn't realized by the doctors. My mom kept taking me to the doctor, but they never really addressed the situation. They'd say, she's fine, she's just got the stomach flu, blah, 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 and kept sending this 19-year-old mom away. Whether or not it's because they didn't value what she was saying or because she was young or a young mom, I don't know. But it didn't, the hole wasn't found until I went into a coma. I was septic, I was very sick, and it took multiple surgeries at 6 months of age to actually clear out that infection. And really, I think it took about 3 or 4 surgeries. And until then, the doctors basically said, this is all we can do for her. And it was really quite somewhat of a miracle, my mom said, for you to start thriving and healing and really responding to the treatment and the surgeries. So from that point on, and I tell you that because throughout my life, I continued to have surgery because of that initial situation. And the adhesions, as I would grow, adhesions inside of me, which is tissue, would grow around those organs and such. So during that time too, when I was in the hospital, there was one point, I think I was in the 1st grade, I spent a month in the hospital.
Oh my gosh.
And that was at Stanford University Children's Hospital. And I remember sitting there, sometimes by myself, sometimes with the nurses around me, because your parents could only be there so much because they had to work, right? They still had to work. They still had daily lives to keep up with. And yet their child was in the hospital. And at that point, I remember thinking, I want to be somebody who helps other people. I want to be, and I thought at the time, because of course, you know, you're around pediatricians, you're around doctors. I thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, but as I grew older, I thought, no, that's not what I want to do. I do.
You're like, no,
I do love kids, and I do want to help people, but I'm not real keen on the bodily fluids part of that. So I was like,
I'm with you. So with you on that.
So I'll go into the whole psychology route and health, human services. And so that's exactly what I did. And so as you can see, as I grew up, there was a real value for me to be of help and to be of support to others, because I did find that there were a lot of people at that time trying to help me. You know, even though there was a lot of chaos going on in my actual personal life, my parents had a lot of strife. They were divorced at an early age. They were divorced when I was 6 months, my biological parents.
Wow.
And And then at that point, my mom raised us for a couple of years. Then she took us to our biological grandparents, paternal grandparents, and dropped us off and said, "You raise these kids for a little while." And so my dad was an abusive father towards my mother, and towards the kids as well. So she thought it was best to put the kids with my paternal grandparents. They raised us for a couple of years. Then we went off to my dad's. And again, that strife was still there. His personality never changed. So again, these were things that I recognized early on too, of being hyper alert about his behavior and knowing that that's not what I wanted from somebody. That's not what I wanted from friends or partners. I didn't need abusive type of relationships or abusive people in my life at that point. And I realized that early on. So when we talk about values and beliefs, we start really tuning into these things really early on. And I think that as we get into the question and kind of springboard into the question that you had put forward earlier on about how do our early experiences kind of guide and establish those beliefs and values? Well, those beliefs and values, as I said, could have been very different based on that situation too, and what I valued. But I also knew that innately inside of me, there was something that was kind, that was resilient, that really just always, I'm the kind of person who's always wanted to raise people up, to be encouraging. And even when I went to law school back east for a short time, I didn't finish. That was a specific choice that I made in my life, that I got there, I experienced it, that wasn't for me. But even in the example that I want to bring up here is even when I was in law school and I would be with my peers, my law school peers, and maybe they did better on a test. And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you did so great. That's so awesome." And my other peers would look at me and go, why are you, complimenting them? Why are you, because that's who I am. And they said, "Well, we're in competition." Yeah, we are in competition, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I still can't be, appreciative of their skill set and who they are. And that's just who I am. So there you go in relation to kind of how I grew up. And then later on down the road, I was raised by my mother I left my father's house at around 9 and then was raised by my mother until I left the house. And that was for me, that was a really great experience because she was a strong mother in the way that she raised me. So she let me have enough freedom to experience some really positive things. And if I had a misstep or two, she also let me experience that. And she said, you're the one who's going to be able to, if you can't pick yourself up now, you're going to have a hard time picking yourself up later. So these missteps are actually wisdom for you, wisdom that you gain over time. But know this, that if you get arrested or something happens, you are responsible for those actions.
Right.
So you need to also think beforehand about the steps that you're going to take in your life and along your journey. So you understand, the consequences to every decision you make, to every action. So she was a strong woman. I really appreciated the way that she raised me because she did let me make my decisions. And whether or not that was a success or a misstep, I had to deal with it.
I love that you use the word misstep, and I use that often as well. Really? There's this idea, of course, of failure, right?
Yes.
And without failing, we can't learn. But failure in and of itself has such a negative connotation for lots of reasons, right? I think it's very triggering for many of us because you think, even our first recollection of, getting an F on a grade for school, right? And then you feel like I'm a failure, I'm not worthy. At least that's where I have taken it. So I love the reframe of that, calling it a misstep, because really, if you are failing, then there's no point for growth. But when you have a misstep, it means that there's an opportunity to learn and to grow. And to me, that reframe on that is really, really valuable. So I love that. I don't know if you got that as well from your mom, but I love how you say that and share that. And that's such a powerful way that you are empowering women is by teaching them that it's not about success or it's and learn and grow.
Yeah. And the word misstep isn't something that I actually got from my mom. It's something in the last few years as I started to write and as I started to think about failure, that word, and the strong connotation, negative connotation that's attached to that, that I just felt uncomfortable about using it. And it's not that we don't fail, we do, but
Sure.
I'd rather call it misstep because I feel like there's some growth concept to that as well,
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can use something different and alter the language a little bit, and it's not being soft, it's not being, what it is it's just giving, it's more of a growth mindset, right?
I think so too.
And
Absolutely.
wisdom, when we have those missteps, it's okay to have missteps. Why? Because, and you have to expect them, because we're human. Humans are not perfect.
Thank God.
I know, right?
By the way.
That's what makes us unique and glorious, right? So whenever I hear somebody saying, gosh, but that person was so successful, and so what they don't see happening is what's happening behind the scenes.
Right.
And there's a lot of missteps, there's a lot of growth, but here's the growth part. When you do have a misstep, you can either wallow in that misstep, or you can, be stagnant in that misstep, or whatever the case may be, or you can take that wisdom, and I believe it's wisdom. You can take that information, that experience, and you can take something and draw something out of it that you can apply. You can apply to later on down your life. So as much as we'd all want to be successful all the time, I almost don't want to be successful all the time, because I don't think I'd be learning as much if I didn't have a misstep now and again.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I teach this to my kids all the time. This is something that I don't know that I was given this language when I was a child. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself. My brother and I are 7 years apart. So I almost was raised as an only child. Right. And there were no other children in my family when I was growing up. So I was, around adults all the time, firstborn, definitely a type A personality. We talked about the fact that I'm a Leo, so a very strong personality. And I always felt like there was all this pressure and expectation on me to be successful, to be perfect. And it's taken me years and years to really overcome that, and to understand that there's so much opportunity for growth. And that's what I'm teaching my children, because I don't want them to have this unnecessary pressure or expectation that they have to be perfect at everything they do. But it's interesting because I see it still. I see it in my oldest son, especially. He's very similar to me in his personality. And when he gets something wrong, and he's brilliant, and he almost always gets things right. But when he gets something wrong, he will beat himself up. And I try to tell him, it's okay. I appreciate that you're giving it effort and you're doing the best you can. And this is how we learn and grow. So don't shut down, but allow it to, to be a growth experience. But it's challenging.
It is challenging. Let me ask you something. I'm going to put this question back on you, because I think this is really, really interesting. So you took it upon, as you explained, you kind of took it upon yourself to be that high achiever. Do you think that was something innate in you, something that was learned and modeled that you saw growing up, or both?
I've always been a fan of honey, but I never knew quite how powerful that sweet stuff made from bees can be. When I first discovered Beekeepers Naturals, I loved their products for their natural ingredients and yummy taste. The fact that it keeps me and my family healthy, focused, and strong is even better. My personal favorites are the Propolis Throat Spray to ward off germs, bee-powered superfood honey to support my immune system and promote mental clarity, and the Bee Elixir Brain Fuel to keep me focused and alert. These 3 are all part of the Hive Pharmacy Bundle, and you can save 10% using code SASSY10 at checkout. Just head to beekeepersnaturals.com and use code SASSY10 at checkout.
And how are you working on understanding that it's okay that you're not always, because being a type A personality, that can be difficult, but you always want to succeed. But how do you kind of relinquish with yourself, or understand with yourself, it's okay to have these missteps. It's okay to, not always just fly to success, So how do you deal with that?
Years of therapy. No, but in all honesty, you asked the question, do I think it's innate? Do I think I was a product of my environment? Probably some of both, right? So my mom loves to tell this story. She even told me this again last week. I've heard it a million times in my 41 years. when I was born, I was in the hospital nursery, right? All the little babies are lined up in the bassinet, and I would cry and then all the other babies would cry, or I would stop crying and then all the other babies would stop crying. So my mom loves to tell this story, how, I was the baby that was like leading the charge, hours old, right? So part of that might be just my innate personality, but I was also the firstborn of two highly successful firstborn overachievers. And they were very young they were moderately young when they had me, 26 and 28. Like I said, I was an only child for 7 years. So I'm living in a household where I'm witnessing and observing parents that are working full-time jobs, extremely hard. Success is hugely valued. Education is hugely valued. And I know that without them even having to say anything, right? Because that's not really a conversation you have with a child up to age 7. It was a lot of just what I witnessed and what I observed. So, and even still, when I talk to my parents now, they'll sometimes make comments and ask me, why was I so hard on myself when I was a kid? And there's no specific reason. I mean, I can't recall a conversation where my parents said, you must get an A on this report, or you must do it this way. But it was just partly a learned behavior from the environment that I grew up in. But what I realized is that as I got older, and especially when I met my husband, who is a brilliant man, but much more easygoing than I was when we first met, he just had a different way of doing things. And he was much more relaxed about how he went about life, and just had this nature about him that was more accepting of the missteps and accepting of all different people, and very, very compassionate. And over 20 years being together, fortunately, he's rubbed off on me in a really good way. And I'm much more calm, much more accepting, even though I definitely get into my moments where I'm all worked up and I get into my like type A, but I find that it serves me better when I step down from that and I surrender.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for answering my questions, because we forget that, and it kind of is a great segue into what I'm going to say here. It's when you realize these things about your personality, about your belief system, about your own value and how you value certain things, like maybe somebody being an achiever, maybe somebody being a little bit more laid back, or maybe somebody being A, B, and C. That understanding, that insight is so freeing, right?
Yes.
It
100%.
Be. And that can be applied to your everyday life. And that also means that it's easier then for you to, how many times people say, sometimes it's just about us getting in the way of ourselves.
Yep.
Well, sometimes it's about us getting in the way of ourselves because we don't realize the things that you may have just said and referred to about what's been modeled, what your personality is like, what, you've been exposed to. All those things can lead to you getting in the way of yourself if you don't have an awareness about those particular factors.
Exactly. So, no, absolutely. Well, I want to talk a little bit about your new show that you have on Instagram, because I think that you are really modeling this idea of women empowering women, right? And that's a huge mission and intention that you have. So talk to us a little bit about this new Instagram show that you're doing, because I think it's so powerful, and especially in the context of we need to support each other. We need to lift each other up. And like you talked about in your law school days, when people asked you why you were congratulating someone for a good score, I'm with you. I'm the cheerleader too. And because when we lift each other up, it raises all of our vibrations, and it just makes the world a better place. So
I love that.
Tell me about yes, we got to raise our vibration. So tell me about how you're doing that with this new empowerment show.
Okay. So this new show, so I've got a podcast, the For Women podcast, where I feature women, right? Women, and they talk about all their journeys, which I absolutely love. But this is a new live show. It's called Life, Love, and Money. And my co-host is with Jen Fontanilla. And this show is, if you think in the context of like a Dear Abby, it's kind of like a new age Dear Abby. So people are submitting their questions about life, love, and money. And Jen is a certified money coach. So she's a single mom. She's a certified money coach. She's been through a divorce. She's been through a lot of different things, where not only does she bring her certification forward with her to the show, but she also brings her wisdom. and what she's learned. So, when she went to buy a house with her partner, she couldn't, he had horrible credit and he couldn't, buy a cardboard box essentially. And so how this impacted them as they went along in their journey together, and then how that looked like when she got it, what that looked like when she got a divorce. And then for me, I tend to answer more of the life and love questions. So, and Jen can too, of course, but I bring not just, my background, my professional background in working with human beings over the last 25 years, but I also bring my own experiences into that as well. And so we ask people, submit your questions, DM your questions to Core Women, and we'll try and get to them every week. And it's it's approximately 1 hour of free coaching on Thursdays on Instagram. So how can you beat that?
That's amazing. Can you give us, if it's okay with you and Jen, I'd love to know a sneak peek. What are some of the questions that you've been getting?
Okay, well, some of the questions, and I think last week we answered some really kind of basic questions, but questions that might be good for older and younger people. So somebody asked us, can you tell us the difference between a checking account and a banking account or a savings account?
Okay.
And that might seem and sometimes it's really interesting because I like to get down to basics before we get into something that's really intricate and complex. And so when we talk about, and so it led to different things, and I'll get to that, but talking about, checking accounts, savings accounts, what that means for the young person leaving the home for the first time, or the parent trying to help their child establish a saving and checking account, what that means, interest rates, what those look like. We got into liquid, your liquid assets versus not liquid assets. So one question led to another question, which led to another question, which this information, if listened to by the preteen, the teen, to the young college student, to the older person who might not, who has never touched a checking account or a savings account, maybe their spouse did it for years and years and years.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, something happened to that relationship or somebody passed away. Now they're dealing with their finances and they're looking at these books like, what is a checking account? What is a savings account? So it's something as simple as that to a question such as, I've read all the books, I've done all the counseling, but I can't seem to break my addiction to a person. How do I do that? How do I stop thinking about this person? How do I stop yearning for this person? How do I stop? And that was another question. So there are questions like that. We've got some real goodies too coming up this next week, and I'm really excited. So I'm excited to answer those questions, as well as, because it is a live show, get input from our audience.
Awesome. That sounds great. I can't wait. I can't wait to check it out. I know I missed the first episode, but I'm going to tune in this week for sure.
And if you missed it, it's on IGTV. So you can always catch it on IGTV as a replay. And we'll soon be doing a YouTube page for it as well. So.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
So with all the work that you're doing, what is your favorite thing right now that's just really lighting you up?
Okay. So I would have to say anything that deals with human beings, human functioning, but more importantly, which draws from my creative side is production. So I love producing. I love producing the podcast. I love producing the live shows. I love producing, generating new ideas constantly. And let me tell you, as you are a creator, I am creating constantly.
Oh, I see it.
book ideas. I've got, ideas for more podcasts, but I love the idea of creation and being creative, and production is my creative outlet.
That's awesome. Is it something that you've taken classes on, or you just like to learn by doing?
I love learning by doing. And so, as you well know, as an entrepreneur, we do it all. So we do the application, so meeting with clients, we do marketing, we do, we maybe hire somebody for our graphic design. We put posts out. So we use social media daily. We have to find ways to, as we post, what are great hooks, what are great, incentives for our followers, what are. So when we're asking ourselves all these questions and getting feedback potentially and looking what other people are doing and maybe like not reinventing the wheel, but creating out of that wheel, it's constant.
Right.
So I think that you as an entrepreneur can also probably speak to this in relation to being a creator. What does that look like for you? How does it feel being an entrepreneur? And also being around people who not are just of like minds, but who are doing similar things and who can support each other. Because when you're around your other friends who aren't entrepreneurs, they're like, well, I go to work and I come back and then I have time to read. So they might not understand your journey or your path as much as maybe somebody who's, living a similar path.
Right. Well, and just to share in full transparency, you and I only met a few weeks ago.
Right.
And fairly instantly, I felt like we had this really vibrant connection because we share so many values and so many insights into this life that we live. And certainly your energy and my energy, I think, work very complementary. I can't say the word. You know what I'm trying to say.
You got it.
It works well together.
Yes.
But I agree. It's like we have that energy that just feeds off each other, right? And we're creators and we get it and we're in the space. So it's really cool when we can make these connections. And I love that you are bringing women together. You are connecting women. You're empowering women to step into their space, even if they're not entrepreneurs, but to hold space for them to just be the best version of you that you can be. And that's what I take away from all the different facets of your work, Summer, is that you are holding space for women to just be who they are and to thrive and to love themselves and to have this radical self-care, radical self-love, radical self-awareness. So,
well, you know what I'm going to say to that? Fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Woo! I'm so glad. Okay. Well, before I let you share with everybody where they can connect with you so they can learn more about how awesome you are, I want to know, what is something that makes you feel sassy?
Oh, what makes me feel sassy? Travel. I love to travel. And I mean, I can get on the road and drive somewhere. That means travel. If I can get on an airplane and go, to another country, I love that. It just makes me feel free. It makes me feel sassy. It allows me to let go. And we need a release. Everybody needs a release in their life, and they need to figure out what that is. And even if that means, it can't be a costly trip or whatever, get on the road, go somewhere, do something, experience something different. And I think all of that and being able to open up to different cultures, different experiences, that just lights me up. So it makes me feel sassy.
I love it. Well, I love that you said too, that even just getting on the road can give you that experience, because travel is definitely halted right now in terms of big extreme travel, but there's plenty of things that we can do by hitting the road in our relatively local area and just find a new neighborhood or a new community that's not too far by road trip. So
absolutely,
it's a great alternative when that's what we have.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I just to give a little tip to those who are kind of housebound and we're not going, far right now. I have this thing called the Sunday drive with my husband. And so we get on the road every Sunday and we try and explore somewhere we haven't been to in our area. So,
I love that. That's super fun.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, thanks.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And tell us now where everybody can find you. How can they connect with you?
Okay, gotcha. Well, thank you for that. So they can connect with Core Women and me on Instagram. So it's Core Women, spelled with a K. So that's Kore, Core Women, just like back there. And then you can find me on Twitter at Core Women 1. You can find me on Facebook at Core Women. And you can find me at Core Women at corewomen.com. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to put all your contact information in the show notes so everybody can connect with Summer there. Thank you so much for being here. It's been such a fun conversation. I knew it would be. I didn't know exactly which direction it would go, as I love that it just goes organically, but I love where this went. I love the conversation about our values and our beliefs and really reflecting on our past so that we can understand who we are right now in the present and really just living our best life and empowering ourselves and others to do the same. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing, and that you are providing a platform for women also to talk about their journeys or talk about something that's significant to them in their lives. So thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate spending time with you today.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. Can't wait to see you next week for another hot episode of Sassy AF TV and the Sassy AF audio experience. Don't forget to rate, review, comment, like, share on all the places, and make sure to tag me at Sassy Healthy Fit so other people can see this show and I can give you a big virtual hug. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye. Speaking with Summer reminds me that it is okay to keep learning and trying new things every day. This is how I grow and challenge myself. As long as I focus on my core values, I know I'm headed in the right direction. Thanks again for being here and tuning in for another episode of Sassy AF TV. It would mean the world to me if you would leave a comment and take a screenshot to share it here with your tribe on Instagram or Facebook. Don't forget to tag me at Sassy Healthy Fit. Then make sure to head over to sassyhealthy.fit and sign up for our mailing list so you always know the latest and greatest in sassy fun. See you next time.